All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm CJ Johnston, and I help organize our knowledge talks here at Kforce. For those of you who don't know, we are a national solutions firm focused on hiring top talent in technology and finance and accounting. I am thrilled to welcome you all to our June Knowledge Talk. Today, we are going to explore the hidden costs of a bad hire and how to refine your hiring process so you can avoid those costly decisions. Joining me today are Manish Mohan and Salim Kaja. Welcome. Manish
Thank you,
is our
CJ.
yes. Manish is our Chief Global Talent Solutions Officer. He has been with us and doing great work here for about 25 years, lots of experience, helped launch our global talent team in 2009. Salim is the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of WorkLlama. WorkLlama is a talent platform that helps companies engage and retain employees and clients. He is a technology evangelist known for developing, implementing, and managing those innovative products and services. And he brings 22 years of experience to the table. So thank you both for joining us today. Are we good again now on audio and video, hopefully?
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So I did want to let everyone in the audience know that today's Knowledge Talk is the second in a series of 3 that we are doing. All of these explore the ins and outs of the staffing and solutions world. So last month, we dug into recruiting and for candidates, how partnering with a recruiter can really help you land that dream job. And next month, we're going to learn how hiring talent as a team can save a company both time and money. And I know that's something we're all interested in. But first, a few housekeeping items for today. We will have a Q&A at the end of the session. If you're interested in participating in that, look to the right-hand side of your screen. There's a Q&A box where you can type and submit questions throughout the discussion. We'll respond to as many as we can at the end of the presentation. You're also going to receive a short survey at the end of the session. Please, please, please fill that out. Your feedback is much appreciated, and it helps us plan the future knowledge talks to make sure that we're giving you the type of content you want to hear. And also, you will receive an email after the session with a recording of today's talk. But let's get started. First, let's get to know our panelists a bit. Since we're going to be talking about hiring, I thought each of you could start by giving me a little bit of a story, either about your first job or the first time you hired someone. What do you remember about that experience? Manish, do you want to go first?
Sure, CJ. So I actually started off with a very interesting job. I used to help muscle men reclaim cars that where the customers were delinquent on their payments. So, it sounds a little perverse, but it's actually not that bad. I was a programmer. That was my first job, and I used to code for Citibank. And my first program that I wrote for them helped identify these delinquent customers. And Citibank actually would use that data and send musclemen. And this is obviously, going back decades. So I'm not sure if they can still do that, but those were the days when, you would wake up and your car's not standing in your driveway because you hadn't made the payment. So.
Right. Definitely a little bit of a shift that you've undergone in your career. But, we all got to start somewhere. And that was definitely, I'm sure, had some good stories.
Salim?
How about you, Salim?
Yeah, so I'll talk about my experience trying to find that first job, right? So it all starts in college, right? You go to your campus recruiting office, and they coach you on how to answer questions, and you're memorizing and preparing with those set of questions, right? And you get your first interview, you go through all those quiz and pre-qualification process. And you're sitting in front there wearing clothes that you're not comfortable in, right? Suit, tie, and all that stuff. And then you're constantly thinking of everything you've memorized.
Mm-hmm.
And then you happen to get that question that wasn't on the list that you prepared for, right? So, as I'm talking about it, one of the things that just came to mind that, our CTO, Krishna, says is, you prepare for an essay on cows, okay? And you go to the competition, and then they say, oh, write about what happens on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, 6 p.m. in the evening, right? So his story is start off by saying, oh, New York is a great city, you know, Fifth Avenue is very busy. And as I was walking, I was completely surprised to see a cow, and
There
then
you go.
start writing the essay about cow, right? So that is kind of what I tried to do, and asked a question that kind of didn't fit what I prepared for. So
Right. Well, in that case, if we throw you a question today, we know that you'll know exactly how to navigate it,
That's
right?
right.
Like,
That's right.
actually. All right. Well, thank you guys. It helps just for our audience to get to know you a little bit more, but we are going to jump into today's topic now. So I did want to set the stage a little bit. Today, we are going to be using the terms good and bad hire. And I wanted to start by defining those terms, at least for the purpose of this webinar, because we're not necessarily talking about good and bad people, right? We're talking about hires and how those roles fit into a company. So Salim, what elements do you look at to determine if a new hire is the right fit or not?
yeah, so you know, there are 4 key dimensions or criteria, right, that basically helps you assess if someone is a good hire or not, and where they fit on that in that spectrum, right, from a scale of 0 to 10, if they're a good hire or a bad hire.
Mhm.
And the 4 key components, you know, for us are, you know, skills, obviously, right, and expectations, training, and the most important thing is culture, right? How well they fit into each of these different core components will define how good or bad of a hire they are. And based on which of these boxes they're, you know, completely off or on, we'll then assess on a scale of 1 to 10, you know, how good or how bad of a hire someone is for your organization.
And Manish, is there anything that comes to mind for you when you hear these terms, you know, good and bad hire? Anything you want to make sure people know when we're talking about them today?
You know, there obviously there's you know, the general good and the bad hires, and then there are the extremes on both sides, and they all have to be treated differently. I think that's you know, my take on it. There are always you know, the bell curve. There are the extremes on each side. So you might have a great hire, and then you obviously treat that person differently. And then similarly, you have a bad hire who could be in some organizations just below the mean. And then, you know, those are the ones you actually try to get them onto the good hire side. But then the ones on the extreme, those are the ones you got to figure out a respectful way to part ways. So that's the only thing I got to add to what you just said.
No, absolutely. And I think that's a good point to make. And one I think that we're going to come back to later in today's discussion too. But first, I wanted to talk about this concept of cost, right? Because there's tangible costs and there are intangible costs. And no matter what, a company is going to have costs associated with hiring someone, right? Like the hiring process in itself is costly. But Manish, what are some of those tangible costs that a company has to account for when they're hiring someone?
You know, one of the things that is very interesting, CJ, is how large these tangible costs can get, and how large these tangible costs are, even without considering the intangible costs. And let me just walk you through that part. So, you know, the tangible costs, obviously, the first thing you got to look at is how long does it take you to turn around this bad candidate? So let's say there's a person that is a mismatch, and it takes you, in service industries, it normally takes a little bit longer because you're not being measured on KPIs on a daily basis. Sometimes it takes 6 months to a year to turn around someone, you know, to find a respectful way to terminate them. So let's say average is about 9 months. Then the other costs, besides the base wage that you're paying them, there is the benefit cost. And then there are the FICA costs. These costs could be the the Social Security taxes, the Medicare taxes, the state unemployment taxes, then don't forget the very important cost of recruiting this person, right? So the recruiting firms can charge you anywhere from 25 to 30% of the annual wages for this person. And then it takes someone to train this person, which could be about 10% of the overall cost of this employee. So you add all this together, and what I came up with was actually astounding. I mean, it could be as high as 1.5 to 2x times this employee's wage that is actually lost when you turn this, if it takes you about 6 to 9 months or 6 months to a year to turn this person around. And that's a huge tangible cost. And from a numbers perspective, let's say it's an employee you are paying $70,000 a year. When I ran these numbers based on the assumptions I just discussed with you, that is north of 100,000. So those were some of the things that that many firms don't consider. What is lost when we lose an employee?
Absolutely. And some of those costs come up just in the hiring process in general, right? Like the time and all of that. But particular if a company makes a bad hire, someone who isn't the right fit for the company, or they're not as performing as expected, that's when they start to incur some of these other costs too. And those are what we're going to call these intangible costs. So Salim, what kind of impact does a bad hire have in your office beyond these tangible costs that Manish just talked about?
Yeah, the intangible costs of a bad hire, are going to be significant, right? And for us as a company that's in a stage where, we are in this, that typical, hockey stick, we are on that pivot point trying to make a turn, right? So for us, a bad hire, I would say significantly more expensive from intangible costs than a good hire, so to speak. Because a bad hire, when they're still in the organization, are causing so much chaos, right? They create all that, in general, they create extra burden for resources that they work with, right? They impact the morale of the team, right? And sometimes, depending on what positions they are in, it could impact your customer acquisition. It could impact your, customer relationships, implementations, right? So they create that environment where they are impacting the performance of their colleagues. At the same time, they're a distraction to people who are trying to manage them, right? They now add that extra burden of trying to monitor and manage and try to keep giving them opportunity to correct and improve, right? And eventually, it will get to a point where you would have to part ways and replace them. And obviously, when you try to part ways, there are costs that come with it, right? There are, unemployment benefits and all those other things. But at the same time, when they leave, they are still creating that void that needs to be covered, right? So if you think about it, there's like 3 different pieces of intangible burden they put on an organization, which is intangible cost, so to speak, right? So the stress and the impact on the morale of the colleagues, the distraction on key management people that are trying to help grow and build the business, right? And then the cost to fill the void, and then immediately all the tangible costs come into picture.
So yeah, I mean, they're all related, right? And they're all impacting the company and the bottom line, and also the morale. So I think those are great points to make, and to understand just how these two things really go together. And like Manish said earlier, these don't have to be extreme cases of bad hires where they're just like wrecking havoc internally. It could still just not be the right fit, and then you still have those costs associated. So knowing how costly these bad hires can be, what steps can we take to avoid this? What can we make sure that we're doing to bring in the right people? Manish, what are your thoughts on this?
So, CJ, one of the things that obviously is eye-opening is, when you just look at the financial burden of the tangible costs, which, as I mentioned earlier, and as Salim mentioned as well, they can be 1.5 to 2x times the base wage of the employee, right? Just that number. The second thing that, if you want to put a numerical, or if you want to put a number to it, is the productivity that Salim mentioned. So if you think of productivity, which varies highly by industry, by business, if you look at Walmart as an example, their gross profit per employee, it runs in the $60,000 to $70,000 per year. If you look at Google, that same productivity per employee runs about $600,000 per employee, right? So now you start adding the tangible and the intangible costs, and you start figuring out, wow, this is not just, we are not talking 2x, we are talking maybe 4x here from the company's perspective of the benefit to the company, right? The lost benefit to the company. That's a very large number, CJ, right? So what should you do? I think each firm should first of all understand that losing an employee is not, you just lost 10 or 20 or $30,000. It's way more than that. The second thing now you need to understand is it's better to spend a very long and protracted time in hiring. So my suggestion is always hire. Stay, you meet a good person in life, anywhere, socially, on social media, start hiring them now, because first of all, it takes a while to get to know that person. But once that job opening occurs in your team, you're not scrambling and in a rush to hire someone who might turn out to be a bad fit. So this is a known person that you're hiring at that point, because you have already invested so much time getting to know that person when you didn't have when you are not in a rush. So that
I love that idea of kind of like planning ahead, because I feel like we tell candidates that a lot, right? Like if you're interested in a company, you should be making contacts there, interacting with them, even if there's not an opening.
Yeah.
But the truth is the same for a company, right? If you're interested in a person, you should be getting to know them and figuring out what the right position could be when that opens up. So
yeah, and CJ, that's one of the advantages of going with staffing firms like us. What we do is we maintain a virtual bench of candidates with us. These are the folks that we have mentored, gotten to know for years, months at least for sure. And once there's an opening at our client, we can turn this thing around and service our clients with a known entity.
100%. And so, Salim, I wanted to get back to something that you brought up earlier when you mentioned those four key categories, skills, culture, expectations, training. So what can an employer do during the hiring process to try to avoid a mismatch on these four categories?
Yeah, so I think this is where I think I'm going to do my cow story. But no, I think few of these are easy to assess, so to speak, right? Skills and aligning expectations; those are relatively easier to assess, right? Skills being you do assessment tests through conversations, right? Expectations you can kind of clearly define and get to alignment on those. But the one thing that I think that's extremely critical, which kind of aligns with what Manish was saying, and then you try to elaborated on it, right? Getting to know the person, which translates directly into that cultural fit of your organization. I think that is the one that tends to be a very difficult one to assess during an interview or even during that quick phase, right? And what happens is, the other three dimensions are easy to manage and control, right? So, for example, if you get someone that's not a perfect fit in skills, right, you can always try to move them to a different area within your organization. And in fact, we have done it, because just being this dynamic organization, right, for us, if we hire someone that may not be a perfect fit skill-wise to the position they're hired, right, we have enough areas to move them, right, because they're fit in the other dimensions, right? So skills is, though you may error, you can still manage it. Expectations, again, the same thing through conversations, right? You can realign and work with that. Training, misalignments, you can again manage those through putting them through programs. But culture is one thing that's, it's extremely difficult to retool, realign, and also to assess. And that's
So,
where that whole concept that Manish was talking comes into play.
and what he talked about, was like early on and really trying to build those relationships before the opening is even there. Once you're in the hiring process, is there anything culture wise, like how many people do you recommend from your team being in on the interview? Like how important is it for somebody to meet multiple different people within the company? Does that help with culture and figuring out if there's a good fit there?
Yes, it does. And, again, it depends on the size and scale of the organization, right? So yeah, obviously it helps with multiple people talking to organizations. And also it helps to work with organizations who have a good understanding of you as a company, right? So we've seen great success working with, obviously partners like yourselves, and other companies that know us well from a culture standpoint, know us from our organizational journey standpoint, right? They can then help us pre-screen and then send candidates that, are likely a better cultural fit. And then with a track record, we know that you understand us, you get our DNA. So whoever you're sending, right, probably already has that box checked to a certain degree, so to speak.
I love that idea of really utilizing those existing relationships, utilizing people who know you and know what you're about too. I think that's really helpful. Manish, anything as far as making sure you're making good hires. What do you look at? I mean, do you evaluate work history? How do you feel about referrals? Anything on those topics?
Yeah, absolutely. Work history is very important. I mean, I dig really deep into someone's work history. What have they accomplished in the past? I mean, if somebody hasn't done anything significant in the past, don't expect them to be a top performer, tomorrow. So I definitely look at, the past, what have they achieved in their previous jobs. I look at referrals very seriously because if they're coming from someone who's already an employee of Kforce, then they have already discussed the culture of hard work, of integrity, and all those other aspects that come with the job that Salim mentioned. The third thing that I look at is college, and what have they done in college? And it doesn't have to be grades. It can be grades, but it can be a multitude of other things. I'm looking for passion. What have they done in sports? What have they done in clubs? What have they done? Some of the other things. Some of the people that I hired they were very interesting people. There was someone who came from a very poor family. They were the first person to get an education in their family. Now that has a lot of value. That shows me, that shows me passion. That shows me hard work. That shows me the ability to buck the trend. Look at foreign workers. That's another great channel to look at. These folks have left their countries. They have left their established relationships to come and taken this huge risk to make a new life in this country. So, all these sacrifices that people have made, they all play a big role in making sure that you're hiring a person who is ready to jump in and make a difference in your team.
100%. And I love that because, it relates to what we were just saying too about, skill set, training, some of those things can be adjusted more. But when we're talking about the importance on culture and the points Salim was making, I mean, then you should probably be scouting at what can you find out about that, whether it was someone's involvement, whether it's their passion for things like that. So really, really great points there. Salim, what about referrals? Should a company incentivize referrals? What kind of value can this have? And, what knowledge does it give you as an employer when you have a referral?
Yeah, I mean, Insan, obviously, right? I mean, you're talking about tangible and intangible costs, right? Of a good hire or, of a bad hire, or even a good hire when they leave the vacuum they create. So obviously, right, I mean, it should be a no-brainer. And also there's plenty of research that suggests, right, referred candidates are your top quality performers, which actually goes into, some of the things that we talked about, right? One is, the kind of like the pedigree stuff that Manish was talking about, and the things that they do if there is an overlap, right? They most likely are a good fit culturally, right? And when people are referring someone, they probably, birds of the same feather flock together kind of thing. So you already checked off that box, and most likely they're going to be a good fit for your organization culturally, right? So we place a very high premium on referred candidates. Again, partly because it checks off that box of being a culture fit. And also, their friends have talked to them about, hey, what is it to work for this organization? They already know, who they are going to be working for, what is the ethos of the organization and things like that. So yeah, referrals are truly a very robust channel for high quality candidates. And when you put the incentive next to the cost that we've been talking about, it's a no-brainer. So yeah.
Right, that comparison there of what you could be losing versus what you're paying to get maybe something that you know is a better fit. Manish, how do you feel about incentivizing those referrals, or maybe like paying different amounts for different skills? What do you think about that?
Well, so we have hugely benefited with this relationship with Salim's company, and we, being in the business of always looking for people for ourselves and our clients, referrals are very important to us. And one of the things that we have done is higher the skill, the more value this skill set is going to create for the firm. We value that more, and we give a higher referral. So there should absolutely be a ladder in paying out referrals based on the complexity of the skill.
I think that's might not always seem natural to everybody. I think, but I think once you break it down, you're like, well, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So I do want to pause here. I want to address an important point, because turnover and attrition, like, these are natural things. It's going to happen at every company. And when it does, the company is going to have to go through that costly hiring process again. So we're always going to try our best, right? We're going to try our best to make those good hires, to avoid the bad hires, but this is just part of how things work. One interesting thing, though, is even though attrition and turnover happen everywhere, the rates and reasons vary dramatically by industry. And so I wanted to dig into that a little bit here, because I know we have lots of different companies represented here today. Manish, what can you tell us about the difference in attrition rates depending on the type of company? I know earlier you talked about the time differences it could take and the cost differences and service and other things. But what do we know about attrition rates varying by industry?
Yeah, so that's a great question, CJ. One of the things that I noticed is that for the safer industries, such as the insurance industries, the energy industries, the attrition rates are lower. Then you suddenly look at the hospitality industry, the retail and the wholesale industry, the attrition rates in hospitality can go as high as 200%. So why is this, right? So I believe that the employees, they give a lot of weightage to working in a safe industry. So obviously the energies, the energy industry, the chemicals industry, the insurance industry, they don't flex as much as our economy goes through its ups and downs. So those industries obviously tend to have a lower attrition, while the industries that fluctuate a lot more, where the labor force contracts and expands very quickly, there the attrition rates tend to be higher. So the employees are telling us that they are ready to pay a premium for industries that are the safer industries. The second thing, that when you look at the hospitality industry and the retail industry, there's the inequity between the pay and the work performed. So you work very hard in the hospitality industry. You keep, long hours, weird hours, and you don't get paid as much. So there's obviously that factor playing in. If you look at this data that you presented, the only thing that jumps up at me that is odd from an attrition perspective is the high-tech industry. And although it is in a very safe zone, people in the high-tech industry don't lose their jobs. The reason I think here the why high-tech jumps is an outlier is because of the opportunities. I mean, there is such a huge demand for high-tech that these people can, jump industries, jump jobs anytime they want. And
they have the freedom of choice, right?
It's the freedom of choice. It's the ample freedom of choice.
Right.
And even during COVID, CJ, I don't know if you know this data, but even during COVID, when the unemployment jumped up to 14%, the unemployment in the tech field was only 4%. So that is almost considered full employment. So it was such a weird a data point that that while the whole country and all the skills are being losing their jobs, the high tech was a very safe zone.
Absolutely. And so it makes sense that we have different rates based on industry, right? But I'm wondering too, we might see some differences here in the size of companies, right? And Salim, I know you've had a lot of different experience here, right? Like you co-founded a startup, but you've also worked at mid and large size companies. So with that experience, like, do you see different rates and reasonings for turnover change based on the size of the company?
Yeah, so just I'll address the question. Just I want to build on what Manish just said.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Right, with COVID, what we are seeing, right, in the tech space, is people now have nobody really kind of cares where you're located anymore. In fact, we don't even ask where you're located. It's more of a, hey, where do you live kind of thing, right? And because that has happened, it's given people a lot more opportunity to say, hey, I want to work as a consultant, right? And I'm working for 3 or 4 different organizations, and they're very transparent about it. And with the, war for talent, so to speak, you are okay with it, right? So that's kind of some of the probably some of the things that are influencing that number, right? It may be an attrition, but still they're consulting back to you while we're consulting for 3 or 4 different organizations. So that's something that we are seeing, and maybe that's driving that data point. But
Yeah,
going back
it's going to be really interesting to see how remote work continues to shape all these things that we're talking about today, right? That could be a whole other topic for us to dig into.
Yeah. So going back to the size of the organization and the the turnover that gets that happens in these type of settings is in a smaller organizations, right? It's kind of difficult to hide from the spotlight, so to speak, right? Because everyone is extremely involved in everything, has a lot of visibility, right? For example, for an organization like ours, right, where on a scale of 1 to 10, we need everyone to be at 10, right? Or maybe that NPS promoter zone, so to speak. So in an organization like ours, right, where there is that intense focus on performance and how to keep moving the ship forward at an extremely fast pace, you tend to sometimes see a higher turnover just because of the nature of that environment, so to speak, right? That's why for us also culture becomes extremely important, because there's a different culture, right? One of the things that I like to describe, I like to say to candidates when we're interviewing is, in our environment, you need to be able to change tires on the engine car of a moving train, right? If you think about it, there are a lot of parameters. It's not just the car, right? It's the engine car of a moving train. So they're all bolted together, right? So in such an environment, you sometimes tend to see higher turnover. Whereas the bigger organizations that I've worked for in the past, right, there's not such an intense focus So you also have a little more room. Those organizations tend to have a little more wiggle room in terms of how they also accommodate, a talent that may not be a perfect fit on all of those 4 dimensions. So there's likely going to be less turnover in such a setting. So yeah, that's how the organization size impacts.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to make sure we made that distinction because again, I know we have people on here today who are probably from all different sizes companies, and it makes an impact with what you're looking at and with what we're discussing today.
CJ, one of the things I would like to mention here, besides the size of the industry, it's also the skills. So, there might be, so there's higher attrition in sales versus, if you look at IT and then if you look at finance. So, IT is somewhere in between. There's, for some reason, higher attritions in the sales folks than, so, across industries, it's also the rate varies by skills as well.
Right. And we're bringing all these things up to let people know, no matter what, you're going to face these costs, but you're going to face them at different rates and different times, maybe than some people in other industries. So just things to keep in mind. But we're going to hit one more topic here before we jump into Q&A. Friendly reminder for people, if you do have questions, go ahead and ask them in the chat. We'll get to those in just a little bit. But I wanted to make sure, we've talked about the costs of good hires and bad hires. We've talked about how bad hires can bring down a team, they can put a strain on a company, the costly, lengthy hiring process. But again, now that we understand more about attrition and turnover, we've accepted that it's inevitable at some point you will lose a good hire. So it's not just bad hires, right? Like at some point you're going to lose a good hire. That has an impact too. And so manage, like, when it comes to losing a good hire, what costs are we seeing there, and what impact does it have on a team?
So when you lose a good hire, that's where some of your really the intangible costs kick in big time, right? So the other things that you got to keep in mind is a good hire actually has a larger impact on your organization and on your culture, because this person is probably a mentor to other people. There are probably other people that looked up to this person. This person probably was an anchor for the management, because this guy was a top performer and the management looked up to this person as well. So, the loss obviously of a good hire is extreme, right? So that's especially of a really good hire. Diverse viewpoints. Normally good hires, they speak well, they communicate well, they are able to express their point of view well. The department is growing because of some of the good feedback that you get from these good hires. So that impact is severe, and we got to factor that in when you're losing a good hire.
So Salim, what can an employer do to make sure that they're retaining those good hires? Like once you've avoided the bad one, you've done everything right in the hiring process, what do you do to make sure that you're keeping people happy and avoiding those costs of them leaving?
Yeah, so you've seen some of the reasons, right, that good people tend to leave, and usually, what we have seen is it's a really good hire who is a great fit culturally, right? They usually tend to leave because they're lost. They're either lost or it's not clearly articulated to them what the long-term game or what's the long-term game plan, right? Most of the good hires that we interact with, especially in the stage of our organization, they're not just looking for a paycheck, because good hires usually can get a paycheck, right? For them, it's also that intangible things about your organization, right? They ask us, in fact, one of the things that we instantly know someone's going to be good hire is the amount of questions that we get asked, right? You go through the interview process and sometimes we run out of time and say, okay, we'll have a follow-up meeting where they are interviewing us, right? So at that point in time, they're looking for something beyond just a paycheck or things like that. They're looking for challenges, right? And these days, with the shift in the generation of the workforce, right? The focus is not just alone on the challenge itself, right? There's a lot of the intangibles. The whole, CSR takes a completely different meaning, right? And it becomes extremely critical even for a small company like ours, right? They start asking, okay, why exactly are you building this? What is the long-term dream? What are we trying to do here, right? You can't just say there's a business need, I'm trying to fill a business need and make money. There has to be something more meaningful. So, these are all kind of the things that you need to have a very good firm stance on and actually live up to it. One of the
Yeah,
things that we talked about.
Those are two distinctions, though, right? Like have a firm stance and live up to it. It's not easy, but I'm assuming, it just takes time and intentional action by a company, right?
Yep, absolutely.
While we're looking at these reasons here on the screen, Salim touched on some like career development, wanting that growth. That's great data that is up here on this graphic, but Manish, any suggestions on what people can do, what managers can do to avoid some of these top ones, people leaving for these reasons?
Yeah, I mean, I have a provocative thought. So, and this is not my original thought. This is actually by Laszlo Bach, who was the chief people officer for Google. And he came up with this statement. He said, pay unfairly. And what does he mean by that? He says, listen, it's very difficult to find top talent. And if you find top talent, it's better to pay them more than to go and hire somebody from the outside. So his point was, even within the same job description, it is absolutely okay to pay people multiples of what others are making. And this was also published in a book, which basically says, the name of the book is Work Rules, and it's a really good book. And the point here is that we do this kind of wage discrimination in America anyway, in the sales organization, where people who produce more get paid more. So why not replicate the same behavior in corporate roles, where if somebody's performing more and they are the top performers, pay them multiples, just like Google is proposing to do. So with that thought, CJ, something for all of us to think through. I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. That is certainly one option of having a better chance of retaining someone, right? Pay them well. All right. Well, that wraps up our part here, but we do want to make sure that we have the chance to hear from the audience. So if you haven't already, please submit your questions in the Q&A box. It's on the right-hand side of your screen. We do have a couple already, and we'll try to address as many as we can in the time here. One of them that came up was, and this goes back to kind of the beginning of our talk here today. How should we evaluate a person with what might look like job jumping from one position to another? So I think this might have been triggered when Manish, you're talking about looking at someone's job history, right? So what if they do have something like a series on their resume where it looks like they were just jumping from one job to another? What takeaways would you take from that, or maybe what questions would you ask of them?
Well, when you see so you first thing I would look at is this early on in this person's career, or is this later on in this person's career, right? So if this is early on, I think most of the younger people, and we were young, I mean, at least I was young at one time. I don't know about Salim, but we all jump jobs, we all change jobs more often than once we found the right job for us, right? So if it is early on in the career, I mean, I would still ask that question, which is try to see if this person can give you a realistic answer. Why? Because this might tell you something about the person. Is this person just restless in general? Does this person hate every manager that they worked for in the past? Do they hate all colleagues that they worked for in the past? Or was it all money? I mean, they might give you something that might be interesting, or it might be truly and honestly more opportunity to learn and gain more experiences within a firm. So if you are saying that this person started off as a junior analyst, then became an analyst, then became a lead, became a manager, well, I think those are great career moves. But this person is actually more talented than the previous firm was able to relate to, right? So I would ask questions. Now, if this person is in the same age group as I am, and they're still changing jobs every year, 2 years, that would be, so that would probably be, 20, 25 jobs. I would be a little suspicious. I would ask more questions, which is, why aren't you able to settle down?
Fair enough.
So yeah, I'd like to just add to what Manish said, right? It's also important to see the type of organizations they switched, right? Sometimes that also tells you, if there is a reputation problem with those organizations, there's probably a reason they're doing that, right? And like Manish said, if they're building towards something, right, there's a reason to do that, right? And one of the things that we are noticing is it's just because of this huge shift in the mindset of the new generation of workforce. They're trying to look for something a lot more meaningful, and maybe they were sold the right bill of goods, but once they got there, right? So I think you also need to do homework in terms of the type of organizations people are switching, and you just can't look at months and years on their resume to decide they're a constant job hopper.
That's a really great point. We have another question here about the hiring selection process and trying to maximize that as best as you can. They asked, what are some suggestions to balance skill, diversity, and experience when you're hiring someone? All of these things are important, but how do you balance these three areas of skill, diversity, and experience when you're trying to find the right fit?
As this person said in their question, all three are absolutely important factors. And if you so it truly depends on the job, right? So if this person is just going to come in and code, and not really you're not looking for diverse ideas, then then maybe you would focus a little bit more on the skills. If you're bringing someone at a manager level, at a lead level, where diversity of ideas are very important. So I personally believe that diversity in the team is critical, because similar people start to just think similarly, and then they become so focused that they sometimes miss the bigger picture. And so it has really benefited my team by paying a little bit more value to diversity. And then experience is boils down to the same thing, which is you don't want to reinvent what has already been figured out by experience in the past. And in many of when I see my daughter who's doing an internship, and she is starting to do data cleanups, all these problems that we had already figured out when I was starting my career. So if she was working with someone experienced, they would basically walk her through that this is how it's done. She doesn't have to go back and then start to think and figure it out and spend months, right? So the more you can get a mix of all these three, the better you are as an organization. But then at the same time, depending on what role this person has, let's say it's a very young role, which is just stay focused on what you're doing for the time being. Skills can be more important than than experience. Salim, your thoughts?
Yeah, so just to add a different dimension to that, right? Obviously, I think we kind of touched upon it from a skills and competency standpoint, right? There are ways to assess, and from a best practices to find a good cultural fit. You definitely have to do a little more, kind of social mining, so to speak, right? And like I was saying earlier, the referrals are something you want to be looking at. And there are technologies that are being built that help with some of this career pathing, kind of, so to speak, right? You can leverage those. but you can't 100% rely on them yet because the solutions have not gotten smart enough to be very prescriptive, right? In terms of saying, hey, this person is going to be successful this way. But yeah, culture fit is an extremely critical one, and it's an extremely difficult one to crack. So you have to kind of rely on all of those different things, and also try to, ask, encourage candidates to ask you more questions, because that will give you some insights into, where what's their mindset. And also, actually, one of the things that I thought about that we ask in our interview as a casual question is, what's your favorite show on Netflix? Right? And it gives some, or a favorite book, or what magazines do you read? All of those kind of help address that culture question.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And we've got, I want to hit one or two more questions before we wrap up here. This one's a little bit related to what we were just on. They asked, what's your opinion of hiring someone with experience versus someone with education? They expanded a little bit. They said, I feel the right questions in the interview will help to sort that out better than just assuming based on the small snapshot on a resume. They asked if you agree, but so how do you feel about that balance of experience versus education, and how do you sort it out?
Salim?
Yeah, so the way I look at education is, you learn how to learn. Is kind of what my point of view is. And yeah, it gives you the basic, knowledge base. But I think experience, right, is a lot more important, because in education, you're truly not learning what it takes to work in an ecosystem where you have so many different types of groups, right? So many different types of people you have to interact with, right? And while you're going to college, you have the choice to pick and choose who you're going to hang out with, right? So education gives you that foundation, which you definitely want to look at, right? But it's the it's the experience that I think helps someone be successful in a given setting, where it's a work setting. In fact, I think these days there are some organizations that are getting to be so radical that they basically look at certain basic attributes that you typically would expect coming out of education, and then place a significantly heavy emphasis on experience. Right. And I mean, there are real-time stories too, right? People, high school graduates that join a company and are very successful at working in teams and navigating the whole workforce ecosystem, so to speak, that have ended up being, CX level people, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
So Salim, that's a very good answer. My answer is slightly different than yours. One of the things, so when you're in the marketplace, you are trying to put yourself in the best light possible. And so my point would be, don't give the hiring manager any reason to discount your resume. So my thought here would be, listen, as Salim said, there are a lot of organizations that are starting to look at the world differently. But there are also many more that still look at a degree first before they will look at some of the other experiences that you have. So my point would be, if you can get a degree and an experience, you will set yourself up in the best possible way to get that job that you're looking for. It is all about creating opportunities for yourself. You really don't want to cut half the opportunities off for your profile just because you don't have a degree, but you might be the smartest guy around, right? Or girl around, for that matter. So that would be just my viewpoint.
Well, thank you both for sharing your thoughts on that question and throughout our whole conversation today. I really appreciated it. And I just wanted to remind our audience members here today to save the date for next month's Knowledge Talk. That'll be on July 14th. We'll be talking about hiring talent as a group and the money and time that companies can save with team deployments. So hopefully you guys can log on for that. But otherwise, thank you, Salim. Thank you, Manish. And for those who are interested, we'll be sending out notes from today's session as well. So I hope everyone has a great day. Take care.
Thank you for attending.
Thank you very much.